We have our first eliminations of the 2019 Stanley Cup Playoffs. The Tampa Bay Lightning and the Pittsburgh Penguins have both been swept in their respective series. We'll do a quick recap and discuss what happened coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So it feels incredibly weird to say that the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Pittsburgh Penguins are both out in the first round, and they both are out because of a sweep in their respective series. This is absolutely amazing, especially in Tampa's case, something that I definitely did not see coming whatsoever. This is going to be one of the worst collapses in NHL history. I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning had such a remarkable regular season and really did not get anything accomplished in the playoffs at all. They're out in 4 straight games. I'm sure many of their fans are very shocked and saddened by this result, and a lot of the team is probably in a little bit of a state of shock, really. Unfortunately, Tampa hasn't really had to play meaningful hockey in a long time, and that obviously had a big part here in their undoing to fall short and lose 4 straight games to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Although they did get off to a fantastic start in Game 1, by the end of the first period, Tampa Bay had a 3-0 lead. We're coasting along. Things were looking good. And really, after that, it was all downhill from there. You factor in a very strong motivational speech by John Tortorella in the Columbus dressing room during that first intermission. He also made some fairly subtle changes to his lineup, adjusting some of the lines. And the rest is history. They adapted very well. They took over, and the Tampa Bay Lightning never really stood a chance after that. And Columbus outscored them the rest of the way. Tampa really never had another lead for the remainder of the series. In Game 1, Columbus came back after that and slowly ticked away at the lead and ended up winning with a third period goal by Seth Jones with a 4-3 victory. Took Game 1, stunned the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like I said, the rest really was history. In Game 2, they had a 5-1 victory. In Game 3, it was a 3-1 victory. It wasn't really even all that close. Columbus really dominated, really, like I said, from second period of Game 1 right through. And then the Game 4 that happened last night with Tampa losing, at least it was a closer game. Tampa seemed to have more fight in them. They scored more goals. They made a little bit more of a game of it, but it was ultimately too little too late. And then ultimately the Blue Jackets again had an answer almost immediately. Before you could even finish celebrating, they scored and took the lead right back. And then they kept it for the remainder of that period to win the game. They added a bunch of empty net goals at the end as Tampa tried to pull their goalie to get things tied up. And they kept pulling the goalie, really, because their season was on the line. You might as well at that point. So ultimately, it was a very, very surprising result. All those moves that the Blue Jackets made at the deadline have paid off. Now let's take a look at some of the results, some of the key stats here from this series. If you want to take a look here at special teams, you can see that the Columbus Blue Jackets really had a major advantage on the power play. Throughout the 4 games, Columbus ended up on the power play 5 out of 10, so that's a 50% clip, which is phenomenal for the playoffs. Well, meanwhile, Tampa only had 6 opportunities, and they only cashed in once for a 16.6% rate on the power play. So obviously, the Tampa Bay Lightning were not drawing penalties, which ultimately means that the Columbus Blue Jackets were dictating a lot of the play, and Tampa just really was outworked and out-hustled here. And Columbus obviously had more opportunities on the power play and took full advantage of that. Obviously, that was a key stat right there. But the other big thing was in the net. If you take a look at Sergei Bobrovsky against Andrei Vasilevskiy, the stats here were not even close. Sergei Bobrovsky ended up with a goals against average of 2.01 in the series and a .932 save percentage. That is a huge difference from Vasilevskiy, who posted an .856 save percentage and a 3.82 goals against average. So goaltending greatly went to Bobrovsky here in this case. As they say, goaltending and defense wins championships, and that's ultimately proves true here. Goaltending was certainly in Columbus' side, as well as the team defensive game for sure. Now let's take a look at some of the point getters here for each club and see how the Columbus Blue Jackets top players really greatly outperformed the top players for the Tampa Bay Lightning. If you look at the Columbus Blue Jackets here, Matt Duchene had 7 points. Panarin had 5. Werenski had 5 as well. They had multiple guys with at least 2 goals or more, including Duchene and Panarin, as well as Cam Atkinson, Oliver Bjorkstrand, newcomer Alex Texier, as well as Seth Jones on defense as well. They all had 2+ goals, and they had other guys with at least 1. Whereas Tampa's top scorer was defenseman Chernak with 3 assists. Not Kucherov, not Stamkos, not Braden Point, none of the top forward guys. Their top point getter was Chernak with 3 assists. Stamkos and Kucherov each had 2 points each, which ultimately was not nearly enough. Braden Point had 1 goal. Obviously, Victor Hedman missed the bulk of the series, and that's a big blow, but still, they should have way more than enough depth to be able to perform better than what they did here. At the end of the day, to summarize why Columbus won is they certainly outcoached the Tampa Bay Lightning. They had better team defense. They took advantage of special teams, and their top players were their top players, whereas Tampa Bay, really after that first period, were stunned, didn't know what to do, and just really could not get anything going. Their top players were not their top players at all. Their goaltending wasn't quite where it needed to be. And then, like I said, Tortorella really outcoached Cooper, in my opinion, and really figured out how to dismantle that juggernaut of a team that they've been all throughout the regular season here. Now let's jump over and take a look at the other series. We saw the Islanders sweeping the Penguins. Now this one was a little bit less of a shocker. I did predict the Islanders to beat the Penguins in my bracket challenge here. However, I did not suspect them to take them down quite so easy. I said it would probably go 6 to 7 games, but ultimately the Islanders winning is not really that much of an upset or a shocker, really. I really thought they could get the job done, and they did it in a similar fashion to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Goaltending and defense does win championships, and you need your top players to produce. It's really quite simple when you make it sound like it that way. But ultimately, that's the kind of performance that the Islanders received from their guys, and the Penguins just were not up to the task to duplicate that this year. Of course, you have Barry Trotz behind the bench, who's a Stanley Cup winning coach from last year, Washington Capitals. He's coached in that Metropolitan Division for quite a long time. He's extremely familiar with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's battled them numerous occasions, so he was certainly more than prepared. And after last year, when he helped the Washington Capitals finally vanquish the Penguins and move on past them in the playoffs, I think he's already well aware what it takes to beat them and was able to help his New York Islanders club accomplish the same thing that the Capitals did last year. Ultimately, though, let's take a look at some of the key stats for this series and see how the Islanders dismantled the Penguins so easily. If you have a look here at the 4 games, ultimately the first game was a lot closer, 4-3 victory for the Islanders in overtime, with Bailey getting the winner there. That was a fairly close game, but the rest of the games were not nearly as close. And even though the scores might not be too bad, the Islanders really dictated a lot of the play, in my opinion. In Game 2, they had a 3-1 victory, followed by a 4-1 victory in Game 3, and then last night they finished with a 3-1 victory as well. Now, last night's game was relatively close. It was 2-1 for the Islanders for a big chunk of the game, and then they did add an empty net goal to kind of seal things up here, ultimately outscoring the Penguins 14-6 throughout the series. Now, if we take a look at special teams were not nearly as big a factor in this series as they were in the Columbus-Tampa series here. The New York Islanders ended up 2 for 11 on their power play opportunities, whereas the Penguins were 1 for 11. So the difference between their power plays and penalty killing was negligible, really. 1 power play goal was the difference, and we're all said and done here. And really, over 4 games, 1 power play goal isn't that big of a deal. But if you take a look at some other stats, particularly in goal, and you compare Robin Lehner to Matt Murray, you'll see a dramatic difference here. The Lehner put up .956 save percentage and a 1.47 goals against average. And Matt Murray, on the other hand, did not come anywhere close to that, putting up a .906 save percentage and a .302 goals against average. So obviously, Robin Lehner greatly outplayed Matt Murray, and that is a huge part of the reason why they were able to get past the Penguins. The shots on goal throughout this series were relatively even as well, so I do think we're able to look at each body of work and compare them fairly evenly here. But if you take a look at the best players from each team, the Penguins had 3 points out of Evgeny Malkin, who led them in scoring. Justin Schultz also put up 3 points. They only got 2 points out of Phil Kessel, and Sidney Crosby was only 1 point and a -4. So obviously they figured out how to neutralize some of the top guys on the Penguins, and they dictated the style of play. They held the puck way more often, and the Islanders obviously shut down the offensive powerhouse that the Penguins have been here over the last number of years. But I think it's safe to say after winning 2 cups, and then obviously last year lost in the second round, now this year they lost in the first round, I think the Penguins are going to have to make some serious changes here if they want to get back to where they used to be and take advantage of having Crosby and Malkin still near the end of their prime years here. Ultimately, though, I don't think they need to go with a wave of rebuild or anything like that, but they do need to make some changes. Not as significant as some other teams, but they do need to go through at least a bit of a retool here, I think, before they can really be considered a serious contender again. The Penguins have had a bit of a hit or miss season all year. The playoffs were never a guarantee for them. They've had a bit of a struggling season just to kind of remain in the top 3 or in a wild card spot. There's plenty of times this year that they was looking like they were going to either be a wild card team or possibly even miss. So obviously down the stretch here, they were able to get their act together and get themselves into a top 3 spot. Meanwhile, you take a look at the top players for the New York Islanders. Jordan Eberle was absolutely phenomenal with 4 goals and 2 assists. You had Matt Barzal with 5 assists. Brock Nelson had 3 goals. Josh Bailey had 3 goals and an assist. Their top players were their top players, especially in goal. So from a goaltending and defensive side of the game, the Islanders absolutely owned the Penguins, and their top players certainly outscored them as well. Like I said, there's a big difference here on the offensive game, but the defense is what led to the offense. The Islanders came out with a tremendous crowd in Nassau Coliseum. That crowd there certainly gave them a lot of energy. They came out strong and hard. They were certainly putting the pressure on each and every game, and they acted like they just wanted it a little bit more, and they got the job done. I guess we'll wait and see who their second round opponents will be, and we'll be doing some previews for those rounds once all the matchups are set. So certainly leave your thoughts and opinions down below. What do you think about the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Pittsburgh Penguins being swept here in the first round? Certainly, like I said, from the Tampa Bay perspective, to me, it's certainly quite a shock. But I'd love to hear what you think, and we can continue the conversation down in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing for more videos just like this one. We'll have plenty more coverage of the 2019 Stanley Cup Playoffs. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up before you go. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and we will catch you next time.